All right, we're back again and we're continuing. I just wanted to tell you another thing about L. Ron Hubbard during that glorious period between 1950 and 1960. One day, Ron arrived at the offices of the Founding Church of Scientology of Washington, D.C., and he was a bit late. He even looked a bit bedraggled, and he had come in riding one of those big motorcycles that he had acquired, and later in the day, I think it may have been at an auditor's meeting after the auditing day, he was telling us that he was riding in from Virginia to go to work at the church, and he was doing pretty good speed on the motorcycle, and that he had run across an open manhole. Normally, these manholes that lead down to sewers and different things have a big heavy plate so that cars and everything can ride over one. But otherwise, there's a big hole in the ground that's about 3.5 or 4 feet in diameter, and he had hit it going at a good speed on this motorcycle. And he said, what happened was I and the bike did a complete rotation in midair and came down again riding. He said, you don't have to believe me, but that's what happened. I did a complete 360 in the air and continued riding on. And given some of the many things that I had seen him do or pull off, I believed him. And that was pretty good. Another thing that happened there was Ron, at his home out in Virginia, had a guy who was sort of like the equivalent of an aide-de-camp, somebody that today we might call a butler. And he was a pretty tough guy, and he ended up stealing a whole bunch of things from the house and leaving. And sometime later he was apprehended by, I think, the Virginia police, and they asked Ron if he wanted to pursue charges against him. He was willing to give back most of what he stole. And Ron said, no, I don't want him charged, but I would like him released into my custody if the police would do that. And the police were saying, okay, that's good enough. So Ron brought him in to the organization, and he said, well, obviously you're not going to work for me again in that capacity, but I'd like to really help you to get you through being a criminal before you leave my employee, as well as my responsibility to you as a fellow human being. So I'm going to have one of our lead auditors by the name of Fernando Estrada audit you on a process that I'm quite certain will make it so that you will not have the impulse to be a criminal again. And he didn't tell him that Fernando Estrada was a Golden Gloves boxing champion in California. The Golden Gloves was just simply a thing leading up to becoming a professional boxer, and Fernando reached the top of that as a light heavyweight. He was a very handsome, terrific guy who really knew how to fight. He was a really great boxer. So he took this fellow into session, and the process that Ron had him run on, because he felt that deep in this man's heart and soul was a great deal of rage, hostility, whatever you call it, that promoted criminal behavior on his part. So he had Fernando run him on a process called simply fight that wall. And the person is to go over to a wall and fight it. Kick it, punch it, give it the elbow. They can do it any way they want. They could butt it with their head. They could curse at it. But they also have to make some kind of physical contact with the wall. So at that time, Ron had all the auditing rooms wired for sound so that he could hear what was going on in them. And sometimes, whether an auditor liked it or not, he might interrupt a session that was being given, a professional session, and advised the auditor and the PC what to do next. It was like being on board ship, because he would also, at different times, you'd be anywhere in the organization, you'd hear Ron say, "Now hear this, now hear this," and he would make an announcement concerning the church or something, and it was just something, a carryover from the U.S. Navy, if you will. But anyway, Fernando and this guy were in an auditing room, and Fernando would give him the command, "Fight that wall." Well, as could be expected, at a certain point, the guy said, "I'm not going to do it anymore." So there was a thing called an assist for a physical type command called Tone 40, in which you could actually help the person to do the process physically. And you could do it in such a way that they would carry out the command until a point that they reached more willingness to do it. So for a little while, Fernando would help this guy go over, and he'd take one of his arms and punch the wall. And finally the guy said, "I'm not doing this anymore, I don't like it. And if you come near me again, I'm going to knock your teeth out." So Fernando knew that Ron was listening in, and Fernando said, "What do you want me to do, Ron, if he decides he's going to knock my teeth in?" And he said, "Well, you can just carry out a two-way communication with him as a fellow fighter." So Fernando said, "Okay, got your message." So the next time he gave him the command, the guy approached him and threw a terrific punch, which Fernando blocked, and then he knocked him down. And he then helped him up again and said, "Okay, now I'll give you that command again, fight that wall." And the guy said a lot of words that I won't repeat on this video, but he then tried again to beat up Fernando, and Fernando handled that as any professional boxer would, and knocked him down, but not to break his jaw or to knock him unconscious, but just to show him that he could also, if he wanted to fight, he could fight with him. It was a two-way communication. It was not meant to damage him, but just to simply deliver communication and acknowledgement at the reality of the person he was auditing. So that went on for a while, and the guy finally said, "Well, you know, that hurts me when you do that." And Fernando said, "I understand that, and it would be much better if you just carry out the command to fight that wall, because we're really going someplace with it." And the guy was like, "Well, all right." So again, he fought the wall, and Fernando kept the process going and going and going until the guy finally just went absolutely and temporarily insane and punched, kicked, swore, beat, named people he hated, did all the things that were inside of him against all the people and the groups and individual things that had happened to him in his life that he hated, and he screamed and he hollered and he fought and he bloodied his hands and kicked his feet and broke the wall down, literally. And he went through this tremendous thing until he cried, he laughed, he swore, anger, rage, the whole tone scale, until finally he was like laughing. He was a changed person. It was like, sure, I could do this forever, and I don't have this desire to kill or punch or harm. And he just ended up where a process is supposed to take a person, where he could fight or not fight. He didn't have any more I have to harm and hurt or destroy in him. And at that point, Fernando ended the process and took him up to see L. Ron Hubbard. And they had a great talk together and parted as friends, which I thought was a pretty neat thing. And I'm not sure exactly why I'm telling you that, but it's another one of those things that L. Ron Hubbard did that I thought the world of. And Fernando was that kind of an auditor. He could meet any communication from, hey, I'm exterior on the moon, what do I do now, to, I'm going to kick the whoops out of you. So, anyway, that's an anecdote, a historical moment, something that I thought Ron did quite well. He could have sent him to jail as a felon. Instead, he freed him as a much freer and healthier person. Thank you for listening.